Sarah Mitchell was never the type to take risks. At 34, she had built a comfortable life as a marketing consultant in Manchester, though comfortable didn't mean fulfilled. Her days blurred together in a monotonous rhythm of client meetings, spreadsheets, and solitary evenings in her modest flat. After her divorce 3 years earlier, she'd convinced herself that romance was a luxury she no longer needed. She focused on her career, her small circle of friends, and the occasional yoga class that promised inner peace but delivered only temporary distraction. It was during a work conference in Dubai that everything changed. The November heat hit her like a wall when she stepped out of the airport, but the city itself was mesmerizing, a gleaming metropolis rising from the desert, where ancient traditions collided with hyper-modern ambition. Her company had sent her to represent their European division at a 3-day digital marketing summit, and she'd planned to keep her head down, network appropriately, and return home with nothing more than business cards and jet lag. But on the second evening, during a networking reception at the Burj Al Arab, she met Karim Hassan. He wasn't like the other conference attendees in their corporate uniforms of navy suits and rehearsed small talk. Karim stood out immediately, tall, with olive skin, dark eyes that seemed to sparkle with genuine warmth, and a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that suggested wealth without ostentation, and when he smiled at her across the reception hall, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Genuine attraction mixed with nervous excitement. "You look like someone who's actually listening to these presentations instead of just checking email," he said when he approached her, his English flawless with just a hint of an accent she couldn't quite place. "Either you're extremely dedicated or extremely bored," Sarah laughed, surprised by his directness. "A bit of both, honestly. Though I have to admit, the view from this hotel is making the jet lag almost worthwhile." They talked for hours that evening, long after the official reception had ended, and most attendees had departed for their rooms or the city's nightlife. Karim explained that he was a German citizen of Lebanese descent, born and raised in Berlin, but he'd built a successful import-export business that required frequent travel throughout the Middle East. He spoke passionately about bridging cultures through commerce, about the beauty of Dubai's transformation, about his love for both his German home and his Middle Eastern heritage. "Berlin is my heart," he told her, as they stood on the hotel terrace, the Dubai skyline glittering before them like a constellation fallen to earth. "But business keeps me traveling constantly. Sometimes I feel like I'm always in transit, never quite at home anywhere. Do you know that feeling?" Sarah nodded, though her transient feeling came from emotional displacement rather than geographical. They exchanged numbers that night with promises to stay in touch, though Sarah assumed it would fade like most conference connections, a pleasant memory that would dissolve under the weight of distance and daily life. But Karim was different. He called her the next morning before she flew back to Manchester. Then he texted her when she landed. Over the following weeks, their communication intensified, from casual check-ins to daily conversations that stretched late into the night. He seemed genuinely interested in everything about her: her work frustrations, her divorce recovery, her complicated relationship with her elderly mother, even her embarrassing passion for historical romance novels. "I love how you see the world," he told her during one of their marathon video calls. "You're honest in a way most people aren't. No pretense, no games, just real." Sarah found herself opening up in ways she hadn't with anyone in years. The screen distance somehow made vulnerability easier. She told him about her ex-husband's infidelity, about the loneliness that had become her constant companion, about the creeping fear that she might never trust anyone again. Karim listened without judgment, offered perspective without unsolicited advice, and shared his own struggles with past relationships and the challenge of maintaining genuine connections while constantly traveling. 3 months after Dubai, Karim flew to Manchester for a weekend. It felt natural, inevitable even, though Sarah's best friend Emma had expressed concern about meeting a man she'd only known online. "I'm not saying he's definitely a catfish or a con artist," Emma had said carefully, "but you literally met this guy at a conference. You don't actually know him." "I know him better than I knew most of the guys I dated in person," Sarah countered. "We've talked every single day for 3 months. That's more communication than I had with my ex-husband in our last year of marriage." The weekend exceeded Sarah's hopes. Karim was exactly who he'd seemed online. Attentive, charming, funny, and seemingly captivated by her. He met Emma for dinner and won her over with self-deprecating humor and genuine interest in her work as a nurse. He brought flowers for Sarah's mother when they stopped by for tea. He held Sarah's hand as they walked through Heaton Park, listening intently as she pointed out childhood landmarks and shared memories both sweet and melancholic. On Sunday evening, as they said goodbye at the airport, Karim pulled her close and whispered, "Come to Berlin. Come see my life, meet my friends, experience my city. I want to show you everything." Sarah's heart raced. The practical voice in her head, the one that had kept her safe and solitary for 3 years, urged caution. But another voice, one she'd almost forgotten existed, whispered something different. "What if this is real? What if you deserve this?" "I'll think about it," she said, though they both knew she'd already decided. 2 weeks later, Sarah boarded a flight to Berlin. Karim had offered to pay for everything, flights, accommodation, meals, but she'd insisted on covering her own airfare. She wasn't naive enough to become financially dependent on a man she'd known for less than 4 months, regardless of how genuine the connection felt. Berlin in January was brutally cold, but Karim was waiting for her at Tegel Airport with a warmth that seemed to push back the winter chill. He drove her through the city in his sleek Mercedes, pointing out landmarks and sharing stories with the enthusiasm of someone genuinely proud of their home. His apartment was in Charlottenburg, an elegant neighborhood of wide boulevards and historical buildings. The flat itself was impressive, high ceilings, modern furnishings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a quiet street lined with bare trees. "Make yourself at home," he said, setting down her luggage. "I want you to feel comfortable here. No pressure, no expectations, just us getting to know each other better." That first week felt like a fairy tale. They explored the city together, the Brandenburg Gate, the remnants of the Berlin Wall, quiet cafes in Kreuzberg where they lingered over coffee and conversation. Karim introduced her to friends who seemed genuinely welcoming, took her to his favorite restaurants, showed her the Berlin that tourists never saw. He was attentive without being suffocating, affectionate without being demanding. "I could get used to this," Sarah admitted one evening, as they walked along the Spree River, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "Then don't go back," Karim said suddenly, stopping to face her. "Stay. Berlin has opportunities for marketing professionals. You could freelance, build your own client base. You're always complaining about your company politics and the Manchester weather. Why not start fresh here, with me?" Sarah laughed nervously. "That's crazy. I can't just uproot my entire life on a whim." "It's not a whim, though, is it?" Karim's dark eyes held hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "We both know this is special. You feel it too. So why waste time with half measures and occasional visits? Life's too short for maybe. I want you here, fully here, with me." The proposal was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. Sarah's practical nature screamed warnings about moving too fast, about not really knowing him, about the risks of depending on someone new. But 4 months of daily communication, weeks of video calls, and this perfect week together had built something that felt undeniably real. "Let me go back and think about it," she finally said. "Wrap up some things in Manchester. Make sure this isn't just holiday romance clouding my judgment." Karim nodded, though disappointment flickered across his face. Of course, I understand. But Sarah, don't overthink this. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that feel crazy at first. When she returned to Manchester, the city felt smaller, greyer, more oppressive than before. Her flat seemed claustrophobic. Her job felt meaningless. Even Emma's company couldn't shake the sense that Sarah had left her real life behind in Berlin. They talked every day just as before, but now the conversations were tinged with a new urgency. Karim painted vivid pictures of their potential future, weekends exploring European cities, building a life together in Berlin's vibrant cultural scene, maybe even starting a family someday if that's what she wanted. He never explicitly pressured her, but his vision was seductive in its specificity. 6 weeks after her Berlin visit, Sarah made her decision. She gave notice at her company, sold most of her furniture, said tearful goodbyes to Emma and her mother, who both expressed reservations she chose to interpret as natural worry rather than legitimate concern, and boarded a one-way flight to Berlin. Karim met her at the airport with flowers and a kiss that felt like coming home. "Welcome to your new life," he whispered against her hair. "I promise you won't regret this." As they drove through the city toward Charlottenburg, Sarah felt a mixture of exhilaration and terror. She'd taken the biggest risk of her life, trusted someone completely, chosen possibility over safety. The practical voice in her head had finally been silenced. She had no way of knowing that within 3 months that voice would return with a vengeance, screaming warnings she could no longer ignore, revealing truths about Karim that would transform her fairy tale into a nightmare, and forcing her to confront just how easily trust could be weaponized by someone who understood exactly how to exploit vulnerability. But for now, in this moment, with Karim's hand warm in hers and Berlin's future spreading before them, Sarah allowed herself to believe in happy endings. The first month in Berlin passed in a honeymoon haze. Sarah woke each morning in Karim's arms, sunlight filtering through the tall windows of the Charlottenburg apartment, and felt like she'd finally found where she belonged. She spent her days exploring the city, setting up her freelance marketing business and video calling with potential clients back in the UK. Karim seemed supportive of her independence, even encouraging. "I don't want you to depend on me financially," he'd said early on. "Build your own success here. I'll help however I can, but this needs to be your achievement." It was exactly what Sarah wanted to hear. She'd been careful not to become the dependent girlfriend, the woman who'd abandoned her life for a man. She paid her share of groceries, insisted on contributing to utilities, maintained her own bank account. But small things began to shift in week 5. It started with Karim's travel schedule. He'd always traveled frequently for business. That's what he'd told her from the beginning. But now the trips seemed longer, more frequent, and strangely vague. When she asked where he was going, he'd offer broad answers: Dubai for meetings or Morocco supplier issues. Never specifics, never details that felt concrete. "When will you be back?" she asked one morning as he packed yet another suitcase. 4, maybe 5 days, a week at most. He kissed her forehead absently, his mind already elsewhere. "You'll be fine here. Keep working on landing that Munich client." "I just wish I knew more about what you actually do," Sarah said, trying to keep her tone light. "You've told me it's import-export, but what exactly are you importing, exporting?" Karim's expression flickered. Something cold passed across his face so quickly Sarah almost missed it. Then the warmth returned. Luxury goods mostly. Watches, jewelry, high-end textiles. "It's incredibly boring, trust me. Lots of paperwork and customs negotiations. Nothing worth discussing over breakfast." He left that afternoon. Sarah tried to focus on work, but unease crept in like cold air through a cracked window. She realized she'd never actually seen any evidence of Karim's business. No office, no warehouse, no business partners visiting the apartment. He took calls in Arabic and German that she couldn't understand, always in another room. His laptop was password protected. She'd never seen a single business document. "You're being paranoid," she told herself. "This is exactly how you sabotaged relationships before. Stop looking for problems." But when Karim returned after 6 days instead of 5, something had changed. He was distracted, irritable, checking his phone constantly. Their conversations became shorter, less intimate. He started spending more time in his home office with the door closed, speaking in rapid German or Arabic that excluded her completely. "Is everything okay?" Sarah asked one evening after he'd barely touched the dinner she'd prepared. "Fine, just work stress." He stood abruptly. "I need to make some calls, international time zones." It became a pattern. Karim would disappear for days without much communication, brief texts, occasional calls that felt perfunctory. When he returned, he was physically present but emotionally distant. The attentive, engaged man she'd fallen for seemed to have been replaced by someone going through the motions. Sarah's friend Emma called one afternoon while Karim was traveling again. "How's the German adventure?" Emma asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "It's good. Different than I expected, but good." "Sarah, I can hear it in your voice." "What's wrong?" The dam broke. Sarah found herself confessing everything. The vague business, the long absences, the emotional distance, the growing feeling that she'd moved her entire life for someone she didn't actually know. "Come home," Emma said immediately. "You don't owe him anything. You gave it a try, it's not working. Come back to Manchester." "I can't. I gave up my flat, my job. I'd be starting from zero." "You're already at zero, love. At least in Manchester you'd have support." And then, after they hung up, Sarah sat in the empty apartment feeling the weight of her isolation. She'd moved to a foreign city for a man who now treated her like an inconvenient roommate. She had no real friends here, limited German language skills, and a freelance business that was struggling to gain traction. That night, unable to sleep, Sarah did something she'd previously considered a violation of trust. She opened Karim's home office door. The room was stark, a desk, a chair, a filing cabinet, all impeccably organized. She told herself she was just looking, not snooping, just trying to understand the man she'd upended her life for. The filing cabinet was locked, the desk drawers mostly empty except for generic office supplies, but there was a stack of mail on the corner of the desk that he hadn't yet filed away. Sarah's hands trembled as she picked up the envelopes. Most were in German, official-looking documents she couldn't fully understand, but one envelope caught her attention. It was addressed to Karim Hassan, but at an address in Wedding, a completely different neighborhood than Charlottenburg. Her heart began to pound. Why would Karim have mail going to a different address? She took a photo of the envelope with her phone, then carefully replaced everything exactly as she'd found it. Back in bed, she stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. When Karim returned 2 days later, Sarah tried to act normal, but she couldn't stop herself. "I didn't know you had another property in Wedding," she said casually over breakfast. Karim's coffee cup paused halfway to his mouth. "What?" "Wedding. I saw some mail. I didn't realize you owned another apartment." The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then Karim's face transformed into an expression of patient explanation. "Oh, that. It's a business address. I use it for receiving shipments. Keeps work separate from home. Why were you looking through my mail?" The question felt like an accusation. Sarah felt herself shrinking. "I wasn't. I just noticed it on your desk when I went in to borrow a pen. My office is private, Sarah. I thought we agreed on boundaries." "We did. I'm sorry, I just..." "Just what? Don't trust me?" His voice had gone cold. "I've opened my home to you, supported your move here, and you're going through my things like I'm hiding something. I'm not accusing you of anything. I was just surprised, that's all." Karim stood, his breakfast abandoned. "I have another trip. I'll be gone for a week. Maybe you should use that time to decide if you actually want to be here, because this suspicious, paranoid energy isn't what I signed up for." He left within the hour. Sarah sat in the apartment, feeling like she'd been turned inside out. Had she overreacted? Was she self-sabotaging again, finding problems where none existed? But that night, alone again, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The man who'd pursued her so passionately in Dubai and Manchester had become a stranger who resented her questions and kept her at arm's length. She pulled up the photo of the envelope on her phone, staring at the wedding address until her eyes burned. Tomorrow, she decided, she would go there. She needed to see what Karim was hiding, even if the truth destroyed everything, because living in uncertainty, she was learning, was worse than living with painful truth. Sarah stood outside the building in Wedding, her breath forming small clouds in the March cold. The neighborhood was starkly different from Charlottenburg, grittier, more diverse, with Turkish shops and Arabic signs competing for space on every block. The address from the envelope led to a tired-looking apartment building with peeling paint and a broken intercom system. She'd told herself a dozen times on the U-Bahn ride over that this was crazy, that she should turn back. But her feet kept moving forward, propelled by a need for truth that overwhelmed her fear of what she might find. The building's front door was propped open with a brick. Sarah slipped inside, climbing the stairs to the third floor. Apartment 3B. She stood in front of the door, her hand raised to knock when she heard voices inside. A woman's voice speaking German, then a child laughing. Sarah's stomach dropped. Her hand fell to her side. Before she could decide what to do, the door opened. A woman stood there, late 20s, dark hair pulled into a messy bun, a toddler on her hip. She looked tired but kind, her eyes curious rather than hostile. "Ja?" the woman said. I'm sorry. I think I have the wrong apartment," Sarah stammered, backing away. "Are you looking for Karim?" the woman asked in accented English, studying Sarah's face with growing understanding. Sarah froze. "You know Karim?" The woman's expression shifted to something like pity. "You should come inside." The apartment was small and cluttered with children's toys. A little girl, maybe 3 years old, played on the floor with blocks. The woman set the toddler down and gestured for Sarah to sit on the worn couch. "I'm Layla," she said, "Karim's wife." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "His... what?" "We've been married 6 years. These are our daughters, Amira and little Zara." Layla's voice was calm, resigned, like she'd had this conversation before. "You're not the first, you know. There was a woman from France last year. Before that, someone from Sweden." Sarah felt the room tilting. "I don't understand. He told me he was single. We've been together for 7 months. I moved here for him. I gave up everything." Layla sat down across from her, her expression sad, but not surprised. "Karim travels constantly. He tells me it's for business, and some of it is. But mostly he meets women. He's very good at making them feel special, chosen. He finds lonely women and offers them a dream." "Why?" Sarah whispered. "What does he get from it?" "Money, usually. Not directly. He's smarter than that. But he convinces them to invest in his business opportunities or to help with temporary cash flow problems." The French woman gave him nearly 30,000 euros before she figured it out. Sarah's mind raced back through her relationship with Karim. He'd never directly asked her for money, but there had been small things. Last month, he'd mentioned his bank had frozen his business account during a routine audit and asked if she could cover their rent for 1 month. She'd paid 3,000 euros, which he'd promised to repay. He hadn't. "I paid rent on his apartment," Sarah said slowly. "The one in Charlottenburg. But that's not his only apartment, is it? He doesn't own that apartment. He rents it month to month, furnished. It's his staging ground. He brings women there, keeps them away from his real life. Layla gestured around the small, shabby flat. This is his real life. This is what his successful import-export business actually provides. But his car, his clothes, the expensive restaurants, rented, borrowed, or paid for by whoever he's currently targeting. Karim is very good at creating illusions. Layla stood and retrieved a folder from a shelf. The French woman left me these before she went home. Police reports, bank statements, evidence of other women. She wanted me to have proof, though I didn't need it. I'd suspected for years. Sarah stared at the folder, unable to process what she was hearing. Why do you stay? Where would I go? I have 2 small children, limited German, no family here. Karim provides just enough to keep us housed and fed. And when he's here, when it's just us, sometimes I see the man I fell in love with. Layla's eyes filled with tears. I'm trapped, but you're not. Not yet. The toddler, Zara, toddled over to Sarah and offered her a wooden block with a gap-toothed smile. Sarah took it automatically, her hands shaking. Does he know you tell the women? Sarah asked. He suspects. We don't talk about it. He comes home, plays with the girls for a few days, then leaves again. It's an arrangement we've both accepted, even if we've never said it out loud. Sarah stood abruptly, the room feeling too small, too real. I need to go. Take this. Layla pressed the folder into Sarah's hands. Document everything. Keep records of any money you've given him. And leave before you give him more. Money, time, pieces of yourself you can't get back. Sarah stumbled out of the apartment and down the stairs, clutching the folder to her chest. Outside, she leaned against the building and vomited into the gutter, her body rejecting the truth as violently as her mind. She walked for hours through unfamiliar neighborhoods, not ready to return to the Charlottenburg apartment that now felt like a stage set. A beautiful lie. Eventually, she found herself in a small cafe in Kreuzberg, ordering coffee she didn't drink while she opened Layla's folder. The evidence was damning. Photos of Karim with different women, the French woman, a Swedish blonde, others Sarah didn't recognize. Bank statements showing transfers that aligned with the timeline of his relationships. Police reports from women who tried to press charges but couldn't prove fraud because they'd given him money willingly. There was even a printed email exchange between Karim and someone named Marcus, discussing targets in business-like language that made Sarah's skin crawl. They talked about investment timelines and optimal extraction periods, like they were discussing quarterly earnings rather than manipulating vulnerable women. Sarah's phone buzzed, a text from Karim. Landing in Berlin tomorrow evening. Miss you, Kay. She stared at the message, rage and humiliation warring inside her. Part of her wanted to confront him immediately, to throw the evidence in his face and watch him scramble for explanations. But another part, the part that had survived her divorce and rebuilt her life once before, knew she needed to be smarter. She opened her banking app and checked her balance. After paying rent and contributing to shared expenses over the past 2 months, her savings had dwindled to less than 4,000 euros. Not enough to start over easily, but enough to escape. Sarah made a decision. She would go back to the apartment tonight and pack her essentials while Karim was still traveling. She would document everything in the apartment, photographs, any papers she could find. She would transfer her remaining money to her UK account where he couldn't access it. And then she would disappear before he returned. But as she gathered her things to leave the cafe, her phone rang. Unknown German number. Hello? Is this Sarah Mitchell? A woman's voice, speaking English with a German accent. Yes, who is this? My name is Detective Kristin Hoffmann with the Berlin police. I'm investigating a case involving Karim Hassan. I understand you're currently in a relationship with him. I need to speak with you immediately. It's urgent and it concerns your safety. Sarah's hands trembled as she gripped the phone. My safety? What do you mean? Not over the phone. Can you meet me at Alexanderplatz police station in 1 hour? Detective Hoffman's voice was calm, but urgent. Ms. Mitchell, please don't return to Karim's apartment alone, and don't tell him we've spoken. Sarah agreed and hung up, her mind spinning. She took a taxi directly to the station, clutching Layla's folder like a lifeline. Detective Hoffman was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and professional. She led Sarah to a small interview room and closed the door. How long have you been with Karim Hassan? The detective asked, opening a thick file. 7 months, but I only moved to Berlin 2 months ago. Hoffman nodded grimly. You're the 4th woman to file a complaint this year, but our investigation has uncovered something more serious than financial fraud. She slid a photograph across the table. Sarah gasped. It was Karim, but with another woman, blonde, young, terrified-looking. They were in what looked like an airport. This is Victoria Lindgren, reported missing by her family in Sweden 6 months ago. Hoffman's voice was steady. We believe Karim is involved in human trafficking. Sarah felt the room spin. Trafficking? But we just lived together. He never tried to... His pattern varies, Hoffman interrupted. Some women he uses for money. Others, particularly those without strong family ties or financial resources, disappear. Victoria had no family in Sweden, was unemployed, desperate for a fresh start. Like you, she met Karim while traveling. The detective pulled out more photos. 3 other women, all blonde or light-haired, all young. We've connected him to 5 disappearances across Europe. The women were last seen boarding flights to Dubai or Morocco. After that, nothing. Sarah's throat constricted. Why hasn't he been arrested? No bodies, no direct evidence. Clever use of international jurisdictions. He's careful. Hoffman leaned forward. But now we have you. You're inside his operation. You can help us. How? Karim returns tomorrow. You go back to the apartment, act normal, and wear a wire. We need recorded evidence of his activities, his contacts, his plans. It's the only way we can build a prosecutable case and potentially save the women who are still missing. Sarah's entire body went cold. You want me to go back to him, knowing what he is? We'll have surveillance. You won't be alone. Sarah barely slept that night in the safe hotel room the police had arranged. By morning, she'd made her decision. She would help them, not for revenge, but for Victoria and the other missing women who hadn't been as fortunate. Detective Hoffman fitted her with a nearly invisible wire and reviewed the plan. Just get him talking about his travels, his business contacts. If he mentions any of the missing women or upcoming trips with specific names, that's gold for us. When Karim arrived at the Charlottenburg apartment that evening, Sarah forced herself to smile and kiss him. He seemed relaxed, unsuspecting. I missed you, he said, pulling her close. I'm sorry about our argument. I've been under stress. I understand. How was your trip? Sarah kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. Productive. I've got a new opportunity in Morocco. Big contract. He poured wine, his movements casual. Actually, I was thinking, you should come with me next month. You'd love Marrakesh. Sarah's blood ran cold, remembering Hoffman's words about Morocco. Really? I'd need to arrange client work. Bring your laptop. You can work from there. We'd stay a few months, really experience it. His eyes studied her face. Unless you're having second thoughts about us. No, of course not, Sarah lied. It sounds amazing. As the evening progressed, Karim made several phone calls in Arabic. Sarah caught fragments, names, dates, mentions of the Swedish situation that made her stomach turn. The wire captured everything. Around midnight, Karim's phone rang. His expression darkened as he answered, speaking rapidly in German. When he hung up, his demeanor had completely changed. We need to leave. Now. Pack only essentials. His voice was sharp, urgent. What? Why? Don't ask questions, Sarah. Just trust me. He grabbed her arm, too tight. There are people who want to cause problems for my business. We need to go somewhere safe until it's resolved. Sarah realized with horror that someone had tipped him off. The operation was collapsing. Let me just grab my... She moved toward the bedroom, but Karim blocked her. No time. His grip tightened, and for the first time Sarah saw pure calculation in his eyes. You're coming with me now. The apartment door burst open. Polizei! Hands where we can see them! Officers flooded in, weapons drawn. Karim released Sarah and raised his hands, his expression transforming into practiced innocence. What is this? We've done nothing. Karim Hassan, you're under arrest for human trafficking, fraud, and kidnapping. Detective Hoffman entered, her gaze moving to Sarah. Are you all right? Sarah nodded, unable to speak, watching as they handcuffed the man she'd almost followed to Morocco, and likely to her disappearance. In Karim's office, police found everything: detailed records of his schemes, communications with trafficking networks, even photographs of Sarah with handwritten notes. Isolated, trusting, good candidate for M.E. Root. 3 months later, Sarah sat in a Manchester cafe with Emma, finally home. Karim was awaiting trial, facing overwhelming evidence. His testimony had led police to 2 of the missing women, alive but traumatized, held in Morocco. Victoria's fate remained unknown. Are you okay? Emma asked gently. Sarah considered the question. She'd been manipulated, used, nearly trafficked. But she'd also been brave enough to help stop him. I'm surviving, she said, and I'm learning to trust myself again. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was survival. And sometimes that was enough.